as I mentioned on Saturday, when we started the panel of our pathways, um, when you are born in the UK, in Scotland, and you grow up with Scotland all around you and your Scottish heritage, you have a different perspective on it. So coming here to the United States and starting to work with the community, and discussing this with Gus and with others, with Bruce Drury, we don't always see things as in the same way. And John Belisai has really been trying to explain this to us over the years. And so that's why this was put together, so that we could better understand the input of American Scots. So I'm going to use, so we received back in the part, we put this online just over 2 weeks ago. And we want to keep going with this survey idea to collect data and to understand what's happening. We've received 31 replies. And the first question we asked is, why were you interested in your Scottish heritage? And 50% said through their parents. That was their childhood situation. But there were also about 1/3 who said something catastrophic happened in their later life. Their father died, their mother died, they lost someone, and they wanted to connect to their heritage to know more. Not many are using a genealogist. Maybe we have to explain what a genealogist is to people, or make it a little bit more accessible to them. Only 4 people out of 31 have used the genealogist, whereas 23 had been working on their DNA. So I think that was a very interesting point. Also, a point which I brought up to John Belisai yesterday was 22 said that they had been finding their tart and finding their clan, but we had 1/3 say they found it very difficult to find the information out. So I think we'd seen that recently when we were up at the New Hampshire Games. ASF was manning a tent called the Scottish Village, and the amount of people who stopped by, because down at Grandfather Mountain you have a very good tent that makes it very easy for people to stop and ask and see. So I think that's something we need to think about, how to make it easier for people to navigate everything. We also asked about education. Are you planning to go to study in Scotland, etc.? Yes, there was interest in that, but there was 22 people who said they would take remote classes. And I think maybe we could do more through SNALC to be noting all the different remote classes that are now available, the different services, the different things that are going on. So definitely there's a great interest. And when we asked what they would like to study, overwhelmingly it was history, with a small amount saying that they're interested in Gaelic, but really amongst everybody who replied, the dance and music was further down in the whole situation. Going on your heritage tour, absolutely. 1/3 said that they planned to do so if they hadn't already done so. So those tours that are planned, as Bart is doing with the forms and others have done for their clans, that does seem to be what people really want to do, and we need to make that easier to happen. And then we asked for some, what has this done for you? Growing pride in Scottish heritage, better understanding of the impact of my Scottish heritage on my life today. It's part of my identity, and I have a kilt. Continued education and entertainment, learn more of my genealogy, enrich my love of Scotland, deepen my knowledge about tradition and heritage. So I think that this helps us maybe begin a more insightful understanding, and we want to continue this and turn it into a Survey Monkey, keep it on our website, and if there is an opportunity for you to share it with your clan or your organization, let's keep collecting their input. And if you have ideas for additional questions to be added, that would be great too. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody? And have you any questions? John, do you want to lead on the questions?
Sure. And let me just say before we do that, for those of us in COSCA, which is Council of Scottish Clans and Associations, we are basically the professional association for the clan and family societies in the United States, not just Highland, but Lowland. Many Lowland families are associated with COSCA. We do here what CASIC does in Canada. I think we're finding a couple of things. We're at a crossroads. We're finding a couple of things. One is we're now, there's much more information accessible, whether it's online, Scotland's People, whether it's through DNA, et cetera, et cetera. We've all talked about it. So there's much more available to people, and that's good. And I think part of our job is to point them in the right direction so that they can get their questions answered. Secondly, as we all know, we're right in the midst of going through a generational shift. And younger people, I'm in my 70s, so younger people are, most people, but I'm talking about really younger people, people under 30. The way you engage them and bring them in is completely different. And it doesn't necessarily make me feel good that it is, but I also realize that if I want to share all this good stuff with them, I and my organization need to meet them where they are. And I would say that's the case for every St. Andrew Society, Burns Club, Clan Society, Family Society in the country, and probably in Canada too. We have to figure out how to do that. And it's not necessarily easy. Some things are obvious, yes. Online social media, Celtic rock, and other things that attract young people are tools to get them to see what we're all about. And as they do, they will change it, which we don't especially like, but that, as Andrew said, that's the way the world works. But the choice is either keep it to ourselves and have it die with us, or share it with them and let them take it and make it living in a way that works for them. That's not going to be easy. We're all going to be facing that. Or, like a lot of nonprofits, Rotaries and Kiwanis clubs that I know of, and you probably know of, that have closed because they don't have enough members to hold a meeting, we're going to go down that road if we don't see this differently. I think that's a function of leadership. We are all leaders, and we have to figure out a way to do that. So that's something for the next conference, and the conference after that, and the conference after that. I don't have the answers, but I think that those are things we need to be dwelling on. So questions about any of this?
Maybe an observation, and to build on something John said, something Camilla's mentioned. First of all, John, one of the things that COSCA does at Grandfather Mountain is host a tent that really attracts people who are looking about where to go. I mean, it starts with the basic question, who's my clan? Well, as we all know, most Scots don't have a clan, and consequently most people in the diaspora don't have a clan. It's a matter of first this basic education. Maybe you have a family group, maybe you have a district. And there are district organizations at Grandfather Mountain, so you are able to direct them to a place that they can get further information. So, I mean, it's important to understand we can always get so attracted to clans and Highland culture. That's important, but it's not everything. And you've got to be careful about that when you're trying to give people a clue about where to look for their identity. The other thing that got glossed over yesterday, because of the time crunch, we were in the morning, but both Professor Harper and Professor Heddle have distance learning opportunity programs. They do degree opportunities. And we will try to, when we do the YouTube piece, get some slide in there that at least gives you a link to their website as well, to a link to their degree programs. I, and perhaps maybe Charlie can restate it, I was intrigued. We have in the States Coursera, which is a consortium of universities and some British universities that provide online courses, many of them free of charge, where, for enrichment, you can go get college quality programming. But it sounds like there is a uniquely British version that focuses on British history. FutureLearn.com.
So Glasgow University has done a wonderful new course that was very well spotlighted in the newspapers around clans, and have other ones coming, and Edinburgh University is starting. So I think we can put a great page together of information, to your point, John.
So that kind of got glossed over, but you should know increasingly there are opportunities, and Bruce is engaged in some of this stuff himself. So
just formally, the future. Yeah, it's actually owned by the Open University in Britain. But a lot of education institutions then contribute their material to it. And the one you're talking about was Glasgow University. Bob Curry and I took part in one of those. Also, I've just recorded 12 webinars for Legacy on Scottish genealogy. You can look them up, just go to Legacy, search for me or something, and you'll find those 12 courses. They're genealogical, they're not history, to a small extent.
I mean, this just makes me wonder whether or not we can provide links on some of these websites, not only to some of these courses that not do everything under the sun, because Future Learn, as you point out, has, history is a small part of what they do, and the Scottish history is a smaller part of that. But the to useful courses that people might want to look at, and books that might be, and again, we can't put every book that's written about the history or literature of Scotland, but there might be one or two that particularly are relevant. Some, Bruce's books on genealogy or whatever they might be, some other books that people have found particularly useful from within this leadership thing. Some selection that goes on, but if you're then interested in reading more about, for instance, Walter Scott, you have a place to start, and or that would be something that would be a real resource that we can offer to people.
I think online resources are particularly critical for a younger generation. There are some trends that you should be aware of. First off, a person under 30, under 40, whatever, is not going to go for a long-form education. But there's ways to build chunks of information, because the younger generation, as we know, shorter attention span. So there's ways, for example, I love the idea of chopping up this workshop into YouTubes, smaller chunks. That will appeal to the younger generation. The other trend is I work for the U.S. Department of Commerce in an agency called the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. I'm actually the webmaster for Broadband USA, and we are doing some survey work with the Census Bureau. We're finding out for the first time in 2017, more people are connected to the internet through mobile services than their computer. So if we want to attract a larger chunk of potential population, particularly younger people, all of our online resources need to be adaptable to a device, an iPad, an iPhone. For example, I love the Casca website, however, frames don't work on iPhones, and you use a lot of iframes up there. I think we, as a group, perhaps with Casca, can help lead the Scottish American community into creating usable product in chunked amounts on appropriate devices, attracting the younger generation to lead them to the long-form education. That's just my observation in the profession.
I told you, Bart, you had to have a cover story. You didn't do quick enough. Yes. David, right?
Hello, good morning. Still, David Campbell visiting from San Francisco, from the Bay Area. It's been a wonderful weekend, so I want to thank all involved. It's been eye-opening, inspiring, and it gives fuel for the next year going forward. I'd just like to comment on what John King Bella said and the role he plays with the council. Grown up in my Scottish awareness and interest in the last decade, affiliated with the St. Andrews Society of San Francisco. And one thought, sort of recurring thought I've had is that there doesn't seem to be sort of a national or international, for that matter, overarching affiliation, parent organization, as it were. So we're sort of left to ourselves to affiliate locally. So with Oakland across the bay for us, a lot South, Modesto, Sacramento. Some of that happens and a lot of it not. And I think the broader the region goes, of course, that falls off from there. So I think anything that we can do to affiliate with each other, St. Andrews with each other, across societies, perhaps even more importantly, would do us well. Just in terms of our current and near future operations, and then thinking longer term in terms of membership, development, retention, and sort of reconstituting ourselves going forward. I think that will be especially challenging if we don't make this happen in a leadership capacity.
I appreciate that very much. I think one of the objectives that this conference was founded to accomplish was exactly an association of Scottish St. Andrew Caledonian clubs. It's something we've never really got to. Detroit, Chicago have become kin organizations, and we have certainly, through personal friendships, formed a degree of informal association. But at various points through the last 17 years, we've focused on how we could do it, whether we should do it. We've had speakers come in from Rotary International, as you say, John, who are a great example of how clubs can retain their individual autonomy, set their own targets, do their own thing, but have a governing body of some kind from which they can draw support and leadership. So I'd be really keen to have a conversation along those lines, perhaps offline. Let's connect. Thanks.
I want to bring it back to a little bit to the educational piece. You know, some of us in the U.S. struggle a bit, but you should know in Canada, they have two outstanding programs that are Scottish study programs. University of Guelph has a program, and then Simon Fraser University on the West Coast has a program. So you should know that those are resources that both Canadian, but they're resources for all of us to use if you wish to. When both Professor Heddle and Professor Harper talked about their degree program, I know many of us aren't interested in a degree. We're interested in enrichment. But you should feel free to have a conversation with them about enrichment opportunities, because universities aren't adverse to allowing people to participate in a course, even if they're not seeking the degree. So just keep in mind, we now have a resource you can directly talk to, Professor Harper, Professor Heddle, and if we'll try to make sure their emails are available on site as well. You know, I won't go into depth about this, but you should know even though we don't have this in the States, you will find in the South that there are several programs. They're not called Scottish Studies. They're called Appalachian Studies. And they stay away from that because, they're, as we've talked about, you have different elements of Scottish populations, but in the end, it's an Appalachian culture, and those universities have focused on Appalachian studies. But in there, you will find programming that deals with cultural issues. It may be music, it may be other types of visual arts, but nonetheless, it's all tied with Scottish heritage. So just keep that in mind as well. Why don't we just take a quick break so you can use the restroom?